Picked up by Westbrook. Westbrook on the return. Here comes Westbrook. He's got a lead. Here comes Westbrook. He gets by. Brian Westbrook going all the way. Touchdown, Eagles.
Touchdown, Jack Smith. The catch of the year. Rivers' ball is intercepted by Leonard, and the Jets are set up in the red zone.
Deshaun Jackson gets a block. Are you kidding? Deshaun Jackson still not in, and now in for the touchdown, no flags.
Welcome everyone to the Code Green Radio Show on WNJC 1360 AM. I'm your host, Rich Wilhelm. Joining me tonight are Jets beat writer Connor Hughes, Jets wide receiver Jeremy Curley, and CFFC's Arias Garcia. We have our fantastic writers joining us tonight as well. We have Craig Gorbunoff, Alex Hand, Frankie Vittorini, John Hazlett, and Joe Perry. The show, as always, is sponsored by Apollo Auto Sales and interstateofgreen.com. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at CodeGreenYSR. The YSR stands for Yahoo Sports Radio. Tonight on the show, we'll be talking to Connor Hughes about recent Jets news and the upcoming draft and free agency. We'll interview Jeremy Curley about the success of last year and what he expects this year. We're also going to be talking about his clothing brands that he's putting on the map. And in our Fan Digs debate of the night, we'll be discussing if the Eagles should pursue Kirk Cousins in the same regard that the Redskins pursued and signed Donovan McNabb in the past. We're going to end the show with a little MMA for everyone out there who likes MMA. And we're gonna talk about CFFC and the main event coming to Pennsylvania with Arias Garcia. So let's start tonight with one of our favorite guests, Connor Hughes. Connor, describe a day in the life of a beat writer for the New York Jets.
Right now, like as things are pertaining right now, or during the season.
I mean, you can go any time period you want. I know this is a slower time of the year until free agency starts less than a month, and then the draft. How about right now with what happened on Monday?
All right, yeah. I mean, pretty much what you look at for a beat writer now is, I was actually talking to a good friend of mine who writes for the Daily News about it, and kind of just joking around about there's no real off season, because you got essentially September through January is when you have the actual regular seasons, and you have the playoffs and Super Bowl in February, and then the NFL scouting combine, and then free agency, and then the draft, and then really you get into OTAs, mini camp, then training camp, then you're back at the regular season again. So there's about a 3-week period there in July where you don't have anything to do in terms of any real events going on. But really, other than that, it's always something happening. But I guess when you talk about out of season beat writing and what you're doing is you'll make some phone calls to people around the league to try to see if you can't dig up any kind of story or any kind of scoop or anything like that. You prowl the web to try to see if somebody else happened to break something that you didn't get your hands on, and then you work to confirm the story yourself and then aggregate the post. And when you're not doing that, a lot of what you're doing is the content right now doesn't necessarily come to you as much as you need to create the content at times. So it's a lot of analysis pieces. It's a lot of having ideas and trying to go out there and digging up some sources to see if you can't figure out a way to make a story out of it. And I don't mean make a back page story, but just kind of get something out of it. So, for example, the Jets have 20 unrestricted free agents. A lot of people are talking about should they be brought back, should they not be brought back. So an example of a story that I did in the off season was, I talked to 5 or 6 league sources and asked them, what the heck they thought the Jets' unrestricted free agents were worth, and then you kind of make a story out of that. So during the off season now, it's a lot of seeing if things break, then digging up stories, creating stories, analysis pieces, some draft reporting and things like that. Right now, it's kind of what the life of a beat writer is like in what is it, February? In February, prior to the NFL scouting combine.
All right, and Craig, I know me and you follow Connor all day, every day. What question do you have for Connor?
Well, really, I think it starts with the news that broke on Monday. I think it was something we all saw coming, but what is sort of your take on the Jets cutting Antonio Cromartie?
Yeah, it was something that was a foreseen circumstance just because, look, Antonio Cromartie is not a bad player in the NFL by any stretch. He still can play a little bit. Last year was kind of a bad indication of that. He was hurt the majority of the season. He had that knee injury in the season opener, fought through it. Clearly was not the same player, but when he did get healthy around week 8, week 9, you saw, a little bit of the old Cromartie, a little bit of the old 4-time Pro Bowler. He didn't have an interception, but he also only allowed 2 touchdowns the final 9 games of the season or something like that. So, my thought process on it was that he was going to be brought back. I thought originally that he wasn't going to outright be cut, but rather he was going to take a pay cut. I spoke to a league source about I guess it was actually earlier, midway through last week. I spoke to him. Essentially what he told me was that the Jets to that point had not contacted Antonio Cromartie about a pay cut. That didn't mean that they were not going to, but just to that point they had not. Now, my thought process with it was that Todd Bowles, and he still does, Todd Bowles loves Antonio Cromartie. You got that from the Instagram post that Cromartie let out on Monday, essentially saying goodbye to former coaches and teammates and players, where he said Todd Bowles has these guys going in the right direction because Cromartie has a tremendous relationship with Todd Bowles. It was known last offseason that Antonio Cromartie wanted to come back to the Jets. He made that known. I mean, he practically screamed it atop his lungs, I want to come back to New York, I want to come back to New York. But the interest from New York in bringing Cromartie back was actually coming directly from Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles was the one that went to Mike Maccagnan and said, look, we got to have this guy. He was the one who talked Cromartie up, because if you remember, he was the defensive coordinator for Cromartie in 2014 with the Cardinals. So it was Bowles and Bowles and Bowles who kept saying, I want Crow, I want Crow, I want Crow, and eventually he got him for that, essentially 1-year contract for $8 million, and it was 4 years, 32, but what it came out to was 1 year, 8. Now, the cut was made because the Jets have 20 unrestricted free agents, and they have essentially between $11 and $13 million in salary cap space. They have holes on their roster aside from the 20 unrestricted free agents. $11 million just wasn't going to cut it. They needed more cap space, and as a result, the business aspect of this is they can't justify paying a guy like Antonio Cromartie $8 million because it's just the money's not there. So they let him go, but from what I've been told is that the exact quote that I got was that the door is open for a return, and that it's not like Antonio Cromartie is definitely not coming back to the Jets. The Jets are still interested in potentially bringing him back, but the feeling that I got was that they're going to see what else is out there, see how the draft folds, and if something happens with Antonio Cromartie, it'll likely be a re-signing that happens after the draft to see, all right, maybe we do want to bring him back. Because if you got to remember, Darren Walls is also an unrestricted free agent this year, and so the Jets are going to need to get another veteran body back there. They're going to need to add another body or two to that cornerback meeting room, but that extra body isn't going to be Antonio Cromartie $8 million, especially not when you have guys like Marcus Williams and co ready to kind of step up and start.
Yeah, that's a very good point about Marcus Williams. I mean, Marcus Williams, he had a year last year. So every Jet fan out there was thinking when Marcus Williams was just going to take over for Antonio Cromartie. I know, John, we talked about this. John, do you have a question for Connor?
Yeah, I do. And Connor, I wanted to thank you for joining us. I want to tell you, of all the Jet beat writers, I think I agree with the things that you say in your articles probably 90% of the time. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate that.
I think you're definitely my favorite Jet beat writer. So
thank you. I appreciate that, man.
Talking about Crow and obviously him being cut on Monday, what other players on the roster do you think have the chance of becoming a cap casualty or a rework contract?
Yeah, it's really of the guys that are left there. You do, as you said, you have the two levels there, 2 tiers, where you have the guys that could be cap casualties, and you have the guys that could just be flat out cut. Flat out cut compared to cap restructures, contract restructures. And when you talk about those guys, obviously DeBrickashaw Ferguson is somebody that immediately comes to mind. I mean, he's getting paid $14 million, or he's got a $14 million cap hit this year. That's a very, very, very large cap hit for an offensive tackle who's still good. I mean, don't take anything away from Brick. He's still a very good left tackle, but $14 million is a bit high for him, so I wouldn't be surprised to know that Maccagnan and co have gone over there and talked to him about a restructure. Nick Mangold, but he's a guy that I wouldn't really expect. And I mean, he on paper looks like a guy that could be a restructure, but the fact is that Mangold still plays at an incredibly high level. He's still probably one of the top 5 centers in the NFL, and it's highly unlikely the Jets go and ask him to restructure simply because what he's being paid is what he's worth. I mean, he's not being overpaid. I mean, Mangold is worth the contract that he's playing on. So if you're talking about a guy that could be restructured, I would probably assume that it would be DeBrickashaw if anyone gets restructured, just because, again, $14 million is a very, very, very high number there to have a salary cap hit of that high for the production you're getting out of him. So I could see that being bumped down to maybe $8 or $9 million cap hit, and obviously adding a little bit more there. In terms of guys that could potentially be released, Jeff Cumberland is somebody that comes to mind with essentially a $2 million cap hit. You don't want to pay a second or third string tight end who essentially is thrown at less than 5 times a season, $2 million. So he can be cut and free $2 million right off the bat. Snap your fingers and there's that money. Breno Giacomini is a guy that I've heard his name come up a bit. He's got a $4.3 million cap hit. Certainly a guy that could be cut, but the thing with Breno is that if you release him, you need to replace him because there isn't a replacement on the roster right now. So if you cut Breno Giacomini, you have to go out there and get another starting right tackle, be that through free agency or be that through the NFL draft, because there is nobody on the roster right now behind Breno Giacomini that would start in place of Breno Giacomini. So if the Jets want to roll the dice and say, all right, we're going to cut Breno, then they better, hope they can land another guy who's as good, if not better, in the free agent market or through the NFL draft. And then the final guy that really is a conundrum and a guy you just don't know what's going to happen, and that's Jeremy Curley. He fell on the depth chart quite a bit this past season. He be that essentially schematically. He had a guy in Chan Gailey who wanted tall receivers, and Curley, who's really probably a top 10 slot receiver in the NFL, is 5'9", so he just didn't have a home. The Gailey chose to go with Eric Decker in the slot, which led to Curley being further behind on the depth chart and further behind on the depth chart. And it's weird because they essentially have to pay Curley the same amount if compared to keeping him. If they cut him, they only free $1.4 million, and I think they still have to pay him $1.3 million. So he's a name that is certainly probably going to be talked about because look, I mean, if Curley was playing a $3 million cap hit, which is what he's got right now, is not a bad thing, but can you justify paying a guy $3 million to essentially be your punt returner? And depending on where the Jets go in the draft or free agency, he might not even have that role. So if you're talking about the couple guys that could be cut that I would keep an eye on as potential cap casualties, you're probably looking at Curley as the wild card of it all. Breno Giacomini, Jeff Cumberland, certainly up there. And then for a restructure, I'd say the Brickashaw Ferguson. I mean, depending on how the Jets do this thing, they could, free themselves to $25, $30 million in cap space, which they ideally need with the 20 unrestricted free agents they've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as far as Jeremy Curley goes, ironically enough, he's on the show tonight.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We're gonna be talking to him about what he thinks about all these free agents too. But Frankie, go ahead, lay out your questions for Connor because we know you have tons.
Hey, thanks, Connor. I enjoy following you as well on Twitter. I've been following you for quite some time, and you rock on there, man. But
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. I had a question, okay? There's a lot of talk in the Jets fan community about Chris Ivory, Bilal Powell, who we should keep, who we shouldn't keep. Who do you think the Jets will end up keeping at the end of the signing? And do you think there's a chance that we may even sign both? Both 27 years old. What are your thoughts on them?
That's kind of the interesting question. If you kind of put the gun to my head and said, which one's coming back, I'd probably say Bilal Powell has a better opportunity to come back than say Chris Ivory, because here's the thing with Chris Ivory. He's going to test the open market. The Jets between now and March 9th are not going to come to a contract agreement with Chris Ivory. Chris Ivory believes he's going to be paid X amount. The Jets are willing to pay somebody X amount, and so I don't believe that you're going to see Chris Ivory re-signed. I just don't see that as something that's going to happen simply because he wants X amount of money and the Jets want X amount of money. Where Chris Ivory could come back and return to the Jets as if he goes out on the open market, realizes that the market is not what he wants, and thus turns around and goes back and takes the Jets contract offer. From talking to people around the league and with Chris Ivory and asking them what they think he's going to be paid, I've heard everything from $3 million a year to upwards of $6 million a year. It varies that much because people don't know what the salary cap's going to be, and you kind of have to grade how people are going to value him. You have teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, teams like the Oakland Raiders that are going to have 70, 80, potentially $90 million in salary cap space and have to use a decent portion of that salary cap space. So where that salary cap space is going to come from, you're talking about overpaying some players. So that's where you could see Ivory get potentially $6 million as if he went to one of those teams. But The general value I'm getting from him is $3 or $4 million. I've heard a 3-year contract worth $12 million with essentially an out after 2 years is kind of the more common contract figure I've heard when it comes to Chris Ivory, and that's what I think he would get. But I honestly, I don't think he's going to come back to the Jets. The way the season ended and how Ivory broke down, I just don't see Mike Maccagnan ponying up money that is going to be very tight. No matter, even if they get up to $30 million, the Jets aren't going to have a surplus in money, and they're going to be better off spending that on someone else. Be that bringing in a running back through the draft. Now, when it comes to Bilal Powell, he's a guy I could see coming back, for another $2 or $3 million a year contract, maybe 2 or 3 years. He's versatile. The Jets offense showed how they can use him last year. The Week 17 loss to the Buffalo Bills showed how much he means to the Jets last year. It's now just a matter of getting the contract figure to work, and who knows? Maybe the Dolphins step up. I know Rich Cimini of ESPN wrote an article about this, about the Bills maybe being interested, or the Dolphins maybe being interested, and that makes sense with Tannenbaum over there and Rex over in Buffalo. So, maybe a team like that comes in and overpays a little bit for Bilal Powell, but at the end of the day, I think Powell will probably be back for the Jets. It makes a lot of sense for him to come back, but Chris Ivory, I think, will be playing for another team in 2016.
And that's a very good point, Connor. And we're not going to let you escape that easy. We have a few more questions for you. But we're going to take a short break to have a word from our sponsors. You're listening to the Code Green Radio Show on 1360 AM, WNJC, Yahoo Sports Philly.
Why buy new when you can buy pre-owned?
Skip the depreciation.
At Apollo Auto Sales, they have over 220 cars, ranging from $40,000 all the way down to $2,000.
Yes, you heard that right. $2,000.
Visit ApolloPreowned.com or call 856-881-2869. That number again is 856-881-2869.
Ask for Joey. Apollo treats you like family.
Their prices are sick.
Welcome back to the Code Green Radio Show on 1360 AM, WNJC, Yahoo Sports Philly. We have Connor Hughes with us, who is one of the Jets beat writers, and we do think he is one of the best beat writers, to say the least. Before we went to break, we were talking about all the free agents that the Jets have. And, Joe, I want to ask you, what do you have to ask Connor? Because we asked him a lot of questions, but there's plenty to ask. What do you have?
Right. So, hey, Connor, I wanted to keep it on the free agent topic, and I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think the Jets can make a free agent splash? Let's say a guy like Bruce Irvin. Do you think that they have a chance to bring in someone of that caliber, or do you think that this offseason is going to be more about taking care of their own, so to speak?
No, it's funny. I don't think they'll make a splash like the splashes that they made last year, where it was every other day they were signing a high-profile free agent. It's not going to be like that in free agency, simply because the Jets don't have that money. I mean, again, no matter how you strike this thing, even if you cut the players you're going to cut and restructure the way you're going to restructure to get to 35 million, to bring back Muhammad Wilkerson and add a running, there's not going to be really that opportunity to add a huge splash. I could see Bruce Irvin being a guy potentially, he's kind of guy that was talked about a ton earlier and has since fallen off a little bit. I could totally see him potentially being brought in as a pass rusher, thrown in there, maybe $4 million, $5 million a year as a prove-it deal, maybe 1 or 2 year contract. I could totally see Bruce Irvin being a guy that could be brought in. But the one thing that'll be certain is that the Jets won't be able to bring in all these guys if they were to franchise tag Muhammad Wilkerson with the intent of keeping Muhammad Wilkerson, then bring back Damon Harrison as well. So it's really going to be dependent on what the Jets end up doing with Wilkerson and Damon Harrison and Ryan Fitzpatrick, because depending on which of those guys are brought back, and of those guys that are brought back, how much each of them gets paid, that'll tell you how big of a splash the Jets going to make in free agency. But I think that it's not going to be so much about making a splash or bringing all their own guys back. It's kind of going to be a mixture of both. It's kind of going to be about making those smart free agent signings, maybe not going and making the huge, they signed Darrelle Revis last year for that huge splash. It's not going to be about making that, but think about signings like Buster Skrine. Think about signings like Marcus Gilchrist. Those guys weren't signings that broke the bank. Those guys weren't signings that stole your bank. Nobody was, right? The back of these newspapers weren't the Jets just signed Buster Skrine. The back of these newspapers weren't the Jets just signed Marcus Gilchrist, but Gilchrist was the quarterback of that secondary last year, and Skrine was an integral part of that secondary. So, James Carpenter, another example. James Carpenter wasn't stealing any back page headlines, but he was arguably the Jets' best offensive lineman, not named Nick Mangold. So, what you're gonna see this year is I think you'll see smart signings from Mike McCagnon. You'll see those guys that they don't overpay for, but rather they bring in guys that round out the roster rather than make the roster. So you'll see some of their own brought back and a few of those signings that kind of, after the season you go, man, that was a hell of a signing right there. But you won't, in my opinion, I don't think you'll see any crazy huge splash or anything like that, just because, again, the Jets don't have the finances to do that. If they were, they'd have to essentially give up on bringing back Fitz, Harrison, and Wilkerson and then go sign, a big name free agent. But really, even looking at this free agent market, I don't think there's anyone out there in the Jets' position of need that they could go out there and sign, because Von Miller was out there. Maybe that's the big splash you talk about. Don't bring back Wilkerson, give $15 million to Miller, but obviously Miller's not ever going to hit that open market.
Yeah, I know you're just talking about Muhammad Wilkerson, and I know, Alex, you had a question for Connor about Muhammad Wilkerson. What was the question?
Yeah, just in a nutshell, is Muhammad Wilkerson worth that kind of... I know he plays the 5-tech DN spot, but is he worth all that money, especially now that you got Wilkerson and Snacks due for a paycheck?
If I don't think that Wilkerson's worth... In my opinion, I don't think Wilkerson is worth that money from the Jets. In my opinion, the Jets are better off taking it, and I've been very vocal about this, for really dating back to last season, with Sheldon Richardson on one side and Leonard Williams on the other side. Muhammad Wilkerson is not worth $15 million to the Jets, because the Jets already have one Pro Bowl defensive end that could potentially be an All-Pro in Richardson, and one guy who looks pretty good himself in Leonard Williams. You have those two spots set. That Wilkerson, just for $15 million, it's almost like too much of a good thing is a bad thing when it comes to 34 defensive ends, as the Jets showed last year, where they really didn't have a home and they didn't have a way to put all three of those guys on the field together. Too much of a good thing was a bad thing. They experimented with a 43 defense, and that was when they lost the 4 or 5 game stretch. The 43 defense with Wilkerson there was just bad, and or the 4 of them on the same line was bad, and it didn't work. And then they put Sheldon Richardson out as an outside linebacker, as a pass rushing outside linebacker, which wasn't horrible, but again, it wasn't very good either. So the Jets have 2 defensive ends. We're saying, all right, now we're going to pay Muhammad Wilkerson $15 million. It doesn't really make sense to me. That doesn't make it work. I can't find a way to make it work for $15 million. Now, Muhammad Wilkerson, the player, is without a doubt worth the money he's going to get paid. I've talked to 5 different sources in the league, and all 5 of them have said Muhammad Wilkerson is going to get $40 to $50 million guaranteed, probably a $100 million contract for 6 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and he's going to get $15 million a year. When you talk about A, how good of a player is, B, how good of a player he is in the community, C, the fact he keeps himself out of trouble all the time, and then you also take into the fact that the salary cap's going up another $10 to $15 million this year, that Wilkerson is absolutely worth the money. He is 100% worth the money, and honestly, he's probably worth a first-round pick to a couple teams if the Jets want to float him out there on the trade block. But Wilkerson is not worth all of those things to the Jets, simply because it's almost like you look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is an unbelievable quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is making close to $20 million this year. Would the Patriots sign Aaron Rodgers? No, the Patriots have Tom Brady. They don't need to pay $20 million to another quarterback. That's kind of how the Jets are right now. As good as Muhammad Wilkerson is, he's, to them, with 2 other defensive ends and other holes on the roster, he's not worth $15 million. If you had, if this Jets team was set and stacked and they were already on the cusp of going to the Super Bowl and their line was fine and they had a pass rush and they were set from top to bottom on this roster, then you can justify, they had extra salary cap space, then you can justify giving that money to Wilkerson. But with other holes on the roster and not a lot of salary cap space, it's better off taking that $15 million and, kind of divvying up to some other holes on the actual roster.
Wow, that's a ton of information at once, Connor. It's great that you have all this information to give on the show. Does anyone have anything else to ask Connor?
Well, just real quick, you said to the Jets, Muhammad Wilkerson isn't necessarily worth that amount of money because of the talent on the roster.
Yeah.
Do you foresee the franchise tag as the more suitable option for this offseason, or do you think they get him to the long-term contract?
I think he'll be tagged. I think that's almost inevitable now, is that he's gonna get that franchise tag. when the Jets decide to do it. I think they have up until it's like March 1st. They have up until they need to actually they have to place the franchise tag on them. So they've got a couple more days here, about a week before they have to do it. But with that being said, I think that the most logical situation is the Jets. The thing is, the Jets don't want to give him away for free. I mean, he is that good of a player that they don't want to just ship Muhammad Wilkerson, let him ride off into free agency and somebody just sign him for free and the Jets don't get anything back for him, with the exception of maybe like a third round comp pick next year. However, I think the thing that would be the smart thing and the logical thing is that they'll probably tag him, and then after they tag him is when they'll look and they'll explore some trades. When that situation comes to fruition, what'll happen is that another team will have to agree on a long-term contract with Muhammad Wilkerson, literally get everything in place. Then the Jets send him to that team. He immediately signs the new long-term contract, and the Jets get back some form of a draft pick for him. So I think that's the situation that'll likely play out with Wilkerson, is that it'll be a tag and trade. The Jets will franchise tag him, and then they'll trade him to somebody else. In my opinion, that's probably how it'll work out. It works for Muhammad Wilkerson. He gets his money, and it works for the Jets because they'll get a draft pick back.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a good scenario for me. I know Muhammad Wilkerson's, an awesome player, but the way that the line is built, I think I'd rather have the pick. I don't know if I'm alone on this. What do you guys think?
See, I think I'd rather have Muhammad Wilkerson just because I would prefer Muhammad Wilkerson over Sheldon Richardson. Sheldon Richardson has too many character concerns for me, and I would rather have the choir boy who's also an all-pro player in Muhammad Wilkerson than the all-pro bad boy in Sheldon Richardson.
I'm always an advocate for taking care of your own before trying to solve it in the draft or in free agency. So if you have the option while it's still on your team, you always take it.
Personally, I'd rather take the pick because then you can lock up Snacks. I'd rather just roll with Snacks, Richardson, Snacks, Richardson, and Williams. I think we haven't seen even the best of Williams. I think he's going to have a huge year next year, and he's just scratching the surface on his potential. So.
For me, it depends on where the pick is. I mean, if you're talking about the top 15 in the draft, I would probably do that. Anything further down, the Texans, anyone like that, I'd probably want a player or something along with the number one. But that's how I feel about it.
Here's my thing, and sorry if I'm cutting someone off. I don't like anyone in this draft as much as I like Muhammad Wilkerson.
To replace him as a 5-tech.
Exactly. Or just really anyone. I mean, who in this draft is so elite that they're going to be perennial all-pro players like Muhammad Wilkerson is?
At that position, no one.
Or even just in the draft. Is anyone in this draft all that spectacular? Besides maybe Laramie Tunsil?
Yeah, I was going to say, outside of Tunsil, there is no lock for this year's draft.
So, to me, it wouldn't make sense to get a first-round pick. I understand potential and everything, but you have a surefire thing in Mo.
You know what, Craig? I totally agree with you, and I don't think I've said that yet on this show.
No, you're right. I think it's a first.
I think we have to keep Wilkerson. I love what he brings to that defense. He's a constant staple there, stops the run, gets a pass rush, from the inside. I think it's crucial we keep him. I also like the fact that his family's from Jersey. He's a Jersey kid. Really good guy. Really, really good guy. So I think keeping guys like that in your locker room especially really helps. And I think the Jets should do whatever they can to keep him, because if they don't, he may go over to the other side, the Giants. And I think they're a legitimate play to get Wilkerson. So I want to do what we can to keep him here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that's going to be answered soon. I mean, Antonio Cromartie's $8 million is probably going to help that franchise tag, to say the least. But I think we've helped Connor Hughes up enough. I want to thank you for coming on the show, Connor. As always, you're a plethora of information. Always continue to listen to his articles all over Facebook. Follow him on Twitter. Yeah, what is it? It's Connor_J_Hughes, if I remember. Tweeting it 100 times. Be sure to follow him. He's a must follow. And I just want to thank you, Connor. So
thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Connor.
Thank you, Connor.
Yes. So on that note, we're going to take a break so some of our sponsors can get a word in. You're listening to 1360 AM.
The Shore Conference, located in Ocean and Monmouth County, New Jersey, is home to some of the best high school sports in the country. Yet finding reliable news and analysis has always been difficult. Not anymore. Head over to njsportsreport.com to stay up to date with everything in the Shore Conference, written by the fans for the fans.
Hey Craig, have you heard about this new company, the Sports Gaming Association?
No, who are they?
Well, they host esports events, and they're starting their own sports news network online. You know how you're always telling me how great you are at Madden and NBA 2K?
Of course, my game is top notch.
Well, now you can prove it. Go to sportsgamingassociation.com and check out their schedule. They're adding new events every day.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out.
While you're at it, you can buy authentic jerseys there too. That way you can represent at your next event. They have events coming up in Milwaukee, Chicago, Philly, and Harrisburg, plus more coming soon. Check them out at sportsgamingassociation.com.
Welcome back to 1360 AM Yahoo Sports Philly. This is the Code Green Radio Show. I just got news. Unfortunately, Jeremy Curley is going to be on the show next week. He had something come up. Athletes usually have stuff to do all the time, so we're not going to hold it against him because he's a great player. We'll see Jeremy next week. Now we're going to go to our Fan Digs debate of the night. Fan Digs debate every week has been great. It is pretty cutthroat at times, and this week is an Eagles question. We are wondering if the Eagles should pursue Kirk Cousins in the same fashion that the Redskins pursued Donovan McNabb and signed Donovan McNabb, because it seems as though the Redskins and Kirk Cousins are at an impasse, to say the least. Let's start with Joe on this one. What would you do if you're the Eagles?
So if I'm the Eagles, I'm not comfortable with my quarterback situation with Sam Bradford one bit. I'm not, I just can't trust Sam Bradford. So you look at what Kirk Cousins did and has been doing for his short time starting in the league, and I don't see anything that I don't like from Kirk Cousins. I like everything that he brings to the table as a quarterback. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm full-fledged going after Kirk Cousins. And honestly, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at Kirk, and you're stealing a possible franchise quarterback away from the Washington Redskins, who just won the NFC East. So, you're taking away everything from Washington there, and you're making your situation better too. I mean, Kirk Cousins is a far superior quarterback than Sam Bradford. I don't care what anybody says. That's so evident. So I think you make a strong push for Kirk, and you know what? If he doesn't take your offer, oh well. You can't say you didn't try. But I think the I think the Eagles would be foolish not to go all in for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, Joe, I actually completely agree. As much as I would love to see him as a New York Jet, personally, I'm a big fan of Kirk Cousins. I think he's a good leader. I think he's a good quarterback. But Sam Bradford just, I don't know. He didn't get the job done last year in Philadelphia. That team had a lot of talent. Blame the coaching staff, blame the scheme, whatever. At the end of the day, Sam Bradford has just not been able to get it done at the NFL level. Kirk Cousins last season threw for over 4,000 yards. His touchdown to interception ratio was really good, and he led his team to the playoffs. That team won the division, which no one thought they were going to do at the beginning of the season. And with the way the contract talks are breaking down in Washington, yeah, Washington can still franchise tag him, but, $19 million, that's a lot of money to pay a guy, and apparently they don't necessarily think he's worth it if they don't, if they're not offering to give him that big salary right away. So that means he might hit the open market. Not if you're Philadelphia, I would have to throw everything at him. I think he's a guy who could take your offense to the next level.
Yeah, just to jump in as the one Eagles resident, I'm actually not a fan of this signing whatsoever, or this hypothetical signing that we're going on about. In my opinion, I haven't seen enough of Bradford's tape. I don't think there's enough out there to really gauge an idea, and that's why it's such a worrisome concept right now as to what you really give a player like this when you're still unsure. You got a new coaching staff. He's going to learn a new offense anyway. All of his receivers were dropping his passes last year, so it's kind of like, what does the ownership do? But on behalf of Kirk Cousins, I'm not sold on it because he had a lot of unknown running backs come in to help pick up the slack of the run game. He had a lot of help from the O-line. They took Scherf in the first round last year to start at guard, and he's got a plethora of wide receivers helping him out. Deshaun Jackson, Santana Moss, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but those guys aren't exactly great.
They're taking the
good.
pressure off of his shoulders in that horrible NFC East division. They're helping him significantly, I'm not sold on giving Kirk Cousins a long-term deal.
I would say the Eagles' wide receivers are more talented than the Washington Redskins' wide receivers.
I do not agree with that one, and I'm a fan.
I don't either,
especially
if you include Reed in as a quote-unquote receiver.
But then,
healthy,
what about Zach Ertz and Brent Selleck on the Eagles? And
I don't think
Brent
Reed
Selleck
is even
more
comparable to those two. I value Reed as probably just under Gronk, to be honest with you. I think he's that good.
Another issue I have is the ceasefire with the ownership in Washington. That just shows as a red flag to me, because it's not like he came into the league and he was a Lions fan. He's a Michigan boy. He was born and raised there, went to high school, played for Michigan State. If he came out and said, I was a fan of the Lions all my life, and he got drafted to another team, and if there was an issue in Detroit, like Stafford's career was a toss-up, et cetera, it would be understandable as to why he's refusing all negotiation and contract talks up to this point. But the Detroit Lions, it might be a toss-up, but with the loss of Megatron or the supposed retirement, they're probably going to keep Stafford. It just doesn't make sense to me why a quarterback coming off the year that he did, because he's got all these stellar statistics, why he would choose to block the incoming calls from the front office in Washington.
Well, maybe he feels like he's being disrespected. I mean, who knows what the offers are? They might only be offering him $10 million a year or something like that. And not for nothing, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL last season.
Right, and let's be real here. When have the Washington Redskins ever gotten anything right in their entire history? I'm going to put
very good point.
I'm
not
gonna
of
put
this
my
century,
money on
anyway.
the Redskins messing this entire thing up, and Kirk Cousins is not to blame. That's where I'd put all my money on.
Well, look at it this way. Here's how I view Kirk Cousins. I happen to like Cousins. I liked him coming out of the draft. I was shocked, as everyone else was, I think, when the Redskins drafted him after taking RG3 in the first round. And I thought it was a waste of a pick, because I think he could be a very good player. He had a very good season. Let's be honest, though. He had a very good season in a very poor division. Okay, I know the stats are there: 4,000 yards, the touchdown ratio, all good stuff. Made the playoffs, and again, a poor division. Look at his stats, home versus away. He is a much better quarterback playing in Washington than he is playing out of Washington. If I'm the Eagles, I stay away. I don't think he's that good of a player where you're going to be damaging the Redskins organization by signing him to your team. And I frankly don't think he's a fit with Philadelphia. Again, he's got Reed to throw to over there, their tight end. Bunch of different speed receivers that I think are much better than the Eagles' receiving core. If I'm the Eagles, I do nothing with Kirk Cousins.
Well, John, one point you made there was look at Cousins' home away record. Let's real quick talk about the New York Jets situation and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who
Sure.
a lot of us on the show think he is a good quarterback, right? I believe you've said you like Ryan Fitzpatrick as well.
I do. Yeah.
His home away record this past season was atrocious. I mean, he was garbage on the road. But I still think if he were to hit the free agent market, a team out there would want to invest in him because of what he was able
I don't
to do
agree
this
with
past
that.
season.
I agree that if he were to test the open market, he would get a 1-year deal, maybe a 2. But at his age and with his previous experience, I doubt he's going to get
with
a long
his
term.
age. Sure, but put it in Kirk Cousins, who might be a similar type of quarterback, significantly younger, arguably in his prime. Put up more yards. He had a really good touchdown interception ratio. Again, made the playoffs. To me, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to be honest. I think he's a better leader than Sam Bradford. I think he has a stronger arm. He doesn't have the same health concerns. He's battle-tested in what he went through in Washington, earning the starting role from Robert Griffin. To me, it just makes sense. It clicks.
I think there's a lot more to prove, though, from an ownership perspective, to want to give Kirk Cousins the reins at quarterback and just say, hey, this is your team, run with it. I think even someone like, if you look at what Jay Gruden did with Kirk Cousins, I think that very much so went under the radar in terms of Kirk's success this year. I think he put him in a position to make some plays that I think any quarterback can make. I liked Kirk Cousins out of college. I still like him now. something about him I still don't trust. And if I'm an owner or a GM, I'm not going to want to give him the keys to the car with a big contract. I wouldn't trust him. I would actually trust Fitzpatrick more. For some odd reason, I don't know why, even though he's older, I would trust Ryan Fitzpatrick more. It's really unfortunate.
Frankie, we're back to the norm because I 100% disagree, but please continue.
Well, I'm looking at the free agent quarterback list, who's available, and it's one of the worst lists I've ever seen.
It's garbage. You're right. It's garbage.
It's really bad. I mean, like, when Brock Osweiler's probably the best option long term.
Not probably, he is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's because of his age, though. Let's be honest.
Age,
That's because he's young and he's
arm,
got a cannon for an arm.
who he learned from.
Yeah, who he learned from. I think the book is still out on Brock Osweiler, to be honest with you.
No, I would agree with
and
that.
but I would look at a sleeper. I mean, I'd bring in, I know this name's been popped up many times, but I'd bring in a guy like Matt Flynn. I'd bring in, I'd even give Freeman. I mean, you
got three no's on that.
Draft a quarterback. Can't go with Bradford. Bradford, I let him go. I don't think he's Philadelphia tough. I think it takes something to play in Philly. It does. You need to be tough. You need to have that a little bit of Rocky in you, you know? I mean, he doesn't have any of that. He's like the opposite. So I would look at bringing in someone that's been around a little bit, been bounced around, has something to prove. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to be in a tough spot with a quarterback in Philly for a couple years at least.
I mean, to me, I view both players kind of the same. I think they're the type of players that can take you to the first round of the playoffs and lose. To me, I mean, it would pretty much be who would take less money. And I don't know who that would be, because the way Kirk Cousins is talking with the Redskins, it seems like he wants $20 million. And the way that Bradford is talking, it makes it seem like he wants about the same.
Didn't Bradford say $25 million at one point?
Yeah, but that's where you start
Doesn't
high.
every free agent
That's all
usually
negotiation.
does that.
I agree. I think that's negotiation with Cousins as well. It's you always want. You're always going to start higher than you're going to take,
But
obviously.
see, I
But that's
think,
the issue. There are no negotiations happening right now. He's got his cell phone turned off, and it's probably going to be off until the new official year begins.
Right, but that is a part of negotiation. Trust me on that. Silence is golden.
Yeah, the cards are really in Kirk Cousins' hand right now. The Redskins might want to act like they have everything in control, but in all reality, Kirk Cousins is kind of dominating the playing field right now.
He's allowing panic to set in Washington is what he's doing.
But
and he's going to get paid off of that panic.
Let's talk about scheme for a second, because I really truly believe that Kirk Cousins is a great scheme fit for Doug Peterson's offense. I think he has similar skills in terms in relation to Alex Smith, and then in addition to that, I just feel like he's a more sound quarterback than Sam Bradford. He hasn't had the injury bug like Sam Bradford has. I think he can do more of the things that the Coach Pedersen wants to do than what Sam Bradford can do. Sometimes Alex Smith likes to run in that offense too. Sometimes that's designed. Sam Bradford could get injured on any play, where I don't have that same concern with Kirk.
But another issue that I have with this was this year a one-year wonder? And I know he's come in the help of RG3 the last couple of years ever since the two were drafted together, but was this year, the way the offense was set up and the way it was clicking with the receivers, with the brand new guard, with the starting left tackle, with an unknown no-name run game that just appeared out of 2015 nowhere, did all these things align the planets perfectly so that he did have the year that he did?
Well, here's the question, Alex. I mean, obviously, it sounds like you prefer Bradford over Cousins, but who would you pick out of everyone this year?
Yeah, no, it's very difficult. As we said, both the free agency class and the draft are absolutely terrible, and that's why it's difficult, because I'm sure Bradford, at 28 years old, doesn't want a short-term contract. He's going to want a 4-year, 5-year, however many dollars that is. He just wants to be settled somewhere. But I also feel that the Eagles are going to expand all options, and that's where the difficulty lies. What do you do with the tape where you have all the receivers dropping all these passes, and when the draft class coming in, as well as free agency, there is no clear-cut, okay, that's going to be our guy for the next 7+ years?
The answer may be where we're not looking. It might be a quarterback on a roster currently that maybe they'll have to make a little bit of a trade for, or gets cut somewhere down the line. I'm not particularly sold on Bradford either, not that I Bradford or Cousins, there's probably about 5 other quarterbacks that I would choose from elsewhere.
And who would that be, John?
Well, you know the guy I'm going to tell you, Rich.
Well, go ahead. No one else.
We
does.
don't.
Mike Glennon. To me,
No.
Keep going.
Piece of fruit there. I'm telling you, that's a guy that I think is a starter in this league. Granted, they drafted Winston because of the position that they were in. I get that. I don't think we saw enough out of Glennon, and I think that guy.
I think we saw more than enough.
I'm not going out and saying the guy's a Hall of Famer. I'm saying he's going to be he's a starting quarterback in this league right now.
He's a starting quarterback like Jamarcus Russell was a starting quarterback.
No,
That's the issue, though.
Look at his stats and look at the team he played on. Look at the teams he played on. Look what his current stats are. They're very good.
You just made a point of it. If he's not a Hall of Famer, why would you as a franchise be willing to take that risk?
Well,
if you know for a fact he's not a
Hall of Famer, you're taking a risk
Famer,
because you're not giving up much to get him.
But you think the rest of the offense is going to do their part? Look at all the playoff teams that we've seen.
The point Alex is making is that when it comes to quarterbacks, you either gotta
you have one or you don't. There's no mediocre quarterbacks in this league that are out winning championships. It's the best of the best. There's only about 5 or 6 of them, and those are the only 2 that are going to come close to getting a championship.
When those guys aren't available, you have to go to that second tier of guys.
But do you risk taking that?
I'm not saying bring in make a trade for Mike Glennon and give him a 7-year contract.
But do you bring a guy like that in and try to do something with the season, and then you get a much lower draft pick the following year?
I'm loving
you bring in a guy like that, maybe you draft somebody to develop a year or 2.
This debate has gone cutthroat real quick because I want to talk a couple of other Eagles things in the last couple of 3 minutes. Before our break. Let's just go around the horn. We'll start with Rich and kind of work our way around. Should the Eagles go for Kirk Cousins? Yes or no?
No.
All right. John?
No.
Joe?
Yes.
Frankie?
No.
Alex?
No.
I'm going yes, too.
Well, I'm sorry, you guys.
A little disproportionate this week, but...
Yeah, but I mean,
it's
like
radio.
I was saying before, I think they're pretty much on the same level. And I don't know if that level is going to be good enough for either of those teams. Like, if you look at them on paper right now, if you look at the teams that are around them, they could make the playoffs. But, I mean, neither of them is going to win a Super Bowl this year. Can we agree on that?
Absolutely.
That one's fair.
I can agree.
100%. Yep.
So, I mean, if they want to throw money at one, they can throw money at one. If they want to throw money at the other, they can throw money at the other. But they just have to build a team before they can even think about the quarterback leading the team. So that's where I stand on it.
Let's talk to the one Eagles headline that broke this week. And Malcolm Jenkins getting re-signed, even though he wasn't going to become an undrafted free agent, an unrestricted free agent, not undrafted. Alex, what is sort of your thought on the Eagles re-signing, even though it wasn't exactly a huge need?
Yeah, he had 1 year left in his contract, and they gave him a 5-year which is at his age, that's a retirement contract. So, and he is a vocal leader in the defense. That was the initial reason that Chip Kelly had brought him to Philadelphia, was to be that voice in the defensive backfield. So I think it's very good that the franchise has locked him up long term and to help break down Jim Schwartz's new 4-3 defense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's smart to take care of your own, and a guy like Jenkins, who really, was one of the better safeties in the NFL last season and really led the defense. I thought it was a really smart, sound sign.
Had he actually caught all those contested balls, there would have been no question that he's one of the top 3 safeties in the league.
Oh, without a doubt. Just real quick, we're kind of in our last minute here before our next break, but what did you guys think about Jenkins re-signing?
I think it was a good move by the Eagles. You're rewarding a player that had a good year for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that the Eagles are taking care of their own. Malcolm Jenkins is definitely a player that they should have extended, and it's great that they did. Now all they need is Cots, and they have it all.
Yeah, it's a good signing. It's a sound decision. Like someone else just said, taking care of their own. That's actually big for the locker room. And team chemistry. Not a lot of people talk about that, but that's a lot of respect from the players when teams do that.
Yeah, I love the signing. He had 109 tackles last year. Look at the interception he had on Cam Newton, too. I mean, just YouTube that because it'll show you how good this guy is and can be. He's only 28.
Is that a little plug to the U Stadium Twitter, Frankie? I saw that video before.
Oh, yeah, Yeah, no, it's a great signing. I think the Eagles are moving in the right direction. I really do, with that signing especially. So.
Well, Philadelphia Eagles, you get 2 thumbs up from the Code Green radio show. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. As I just said, you're listening to the Code Green radio show on 1360 AM, WNJC, Yahoo Sports Philly.
Why buy new when you can buy pre-owned?
Skip the depreciation.
At Apollo Auto Sales, they have over 220 cars, ranging from $40,000 all the way down to $2,000.
Yes, you heard that right. $2,000.
Visit ApolloPreowned.com or call 856-881-2869. That number again is 856-881-2869.
Ask for Joey. Apollo treats you like family.
Their prices are sick.
Welcome back to the Code Green radio show on 1360 AM, Yahoo Sports Philly. We have a special guest on right now. His name is Arias Garcia, and he's affiliated with the CFFC, which is MMA, fighting for all you people out there. So Arias, just tell us a little bit about the event that's going to happen in Pennsylvania over the weekend.
All right, so thanks for having me, guys. This Saturday will be Cage Fury Fighting Championships number 56. We have a good card lined up. We have 11 bouts scheduled. We have 5 amateur bouts along with 6 professional bouts. It'll be highlighted with the welterweight crown fight. That's actually the title is vacant right now. Our last 3 fighters who held that belt went on to fight in the UFC. One of them fought this past weekend in Pittsburgh. That'll pit undefeated Jeremiah Wells against the veteran Emmanuel Wallow, who has a record of 9-2-1. So we're really excited about this weekend coming up.
All right, and Craig, you used to do MMA. So what question do you have for Arias?
Yeah, Arias, basically, I guess my question is, what do you look for sort of in your fighters? What do you think makes a good MMA fighter?
Well, obviously we like a fighter that's well-rounded, and obviously we would like a fighter that can sell himself, that can be also charismatic on the mic, because we want to draw that casual fan that not only likes fighting but wants to come and see this guy, again. So it's great to have a combination of a fighter that's really well-rounded and also can handle himself, professionally, can also, when we give him the microphone, can sell himself, because we want someone. We want a fan to walk out there and say, man, I want to see that guy again.
And then, so your event coming up on the 27th is in Philadelphia. How can our listeners go to this event, since they'll be nearby?
Yeah, it's at if you're familiar with the area, it's at the old ECW arena, the 2300 arena on Swanson Street, right under the bridge, right around the corner from Tony Luke's. Tickets, you can purchase them at our website, www.cffc.tv, or just come on over. There should be limited tickets available at the door.
All right.
Arias, go on and how much are the tickets for people that are wondering? There's 3 different types of tickets you can get, correct?
Yeah, there's general admission, which is $55, then premium is $75, and then for our cage side is $125. But I believe we're sold out of the cage side seats right now.
So it seems like it's a hot event. Joe, what question do you have for Arias?
Yeah, so Arias, quick question. Where do most of your fighters come from? Do you have any fighters coming out of the Jersey Shore and making the trip, or where do you get the bulk of your fighters?
We get the bulk of our fighters within, Philadelphia, South Jersey, and we do have fighters from the Jersey Shore and North Jersey. Like our main event fighter, Jeremiah Wells, he's a homegrown Philadelphia kid, and Emmanuel Wallow, he's from Jersey City. Then we actually in the co-main event, we actually have someone coming down from Canada who's going to be taking on Sean Santella, who trains out of the Nicotone Gym, who's a Renzo Gracie affiliate in Bud Lake, New Jersey.
All right, and Arias, how did you get into this, and what is your position with the CFFC?
I've always been a fan since day one. I remember my dad, renting the first UFC on pay-per-view in 1993, and I just, I've always been a fan since. I found out early that I couldn't fight, so it was, just get myself involved, and I became the matchmaker back in 2010.
Yeah, Arias, I can definitely agree with you on that one. I did MMA for a number of years, and it's tough, and that's why I find myself now analyzing the sport instead of participating in it. But let's kind of loop MMA and football together, and sort of who in the NFL, or specifically, let's talk Philadelphia Eagles, do you think would be a good fit as a mixed martial artist?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I wish David Akers was back on the team. He did a little bit. He did a little jujitsu back in his time. I don't really see that type of I mean, I wish B-Dawk was back on the team. I don't really see that guy yet. That guy that can take someone, that can be like a captain, it can be like a leader, take someone by the shoulder pads and just scream at. I don't really see an MMA type fighter on his team. I really don't.
Hey, Arias. Okay, you're an Eagles fan. We know this. And you probably aren't a big fan of Chip Kelly. So what I want to ask is, if put into the octagon with Chip Kelly, what are you doing? Are you throwing the arm? Are you getting him in that arm bar? Like, what are you doing to Chip?
Nah, you can't submit him because that's letting him off too easy. You got to go in there and just really lay into him, TKO, let him, right when he's about to go out, you don't level into him more. You kind of let him get back and, beat on him some more.
I love that. Love that answer. That's a great answer. And Alex, what question do you have for Aries?
You know what? As a fan, what are you hoping to see out of this year for the 2016 Eagles?
You know what? I'm just hoping. I don't know. I don't see us really improving that much. I mean, we didn't franchise tag Bradford, so I mean, we're going to probably sign him to a stupid deal, which I don't agree with. I rather, us take our chances, let him walk, let us build someone through the draft. I don't expect much out of this season. I really don't.
And then Arias, going back to the CFFC, where can fans find you guys on social media and keep up to date on everything you guys got going on?
Well, we're available on Twitter and Facebook. Facebook, just search for our name, Cage Fury Fighting Championships. Our Twitter handle is at CFFC MMA. And that's pretty much it. We signed a deal with CBS Sports Network last year. We're hoping to get back on Comcast later on this year as well.
Awesome, that sounds great. And then we have the fight booked for the 27th in Philly. What are some of your upcoming events in the future?
Well, in March 19th, we're actually back at the 2300 Arena. It'll be a good homecoming we actually crowned our first female champion, Caitlin Chukagan, who's a 125-pounder. She's actually from Philly. She'll be defending her title for the second time against a female from Paraguay. I cannot find anyone in the United States to fight her, so I had to go out the country. Her last opponent was from Brazil. We had to fly her, and this girl we're flying in from Paraguay. And after that, we're heading back to our hometown, Borgata, for May 21st. That'll be a huge all-pro event.
And what would someone do to get into the CFFC? How would they do that? Would they contact you directly, or since you're the matchmaker? How does that work?
Yeah, well, I pretty much have a good set of managers that I come in contact with daily, and they know to reach out to me when they're looking for a fight. Primarily, obviously, on the regional level, we survive by our ticket sales. So our first choice is primarily always the local guys, the people from Daniel Gracie's gym in Philadelphia, Kurt Pellegrino out in Belmar, the guys from Datus, fight camp. So we're always looking for the local guy first, and, through Facebook and just through people who know me throughout the years, they always will contact me and tell me who they got ready, and we'll match them up accordingly.
And, you mentioned a number of your fighters have moved on to the UFC, which is sort of, the top of the MMA world. Who are some guys you have fighting for you at this moment who you think could possibly take that next big step and be the next big name in MMA?
Well, I believe our 125 current champion, Sadeko Honario, is a 125er that he's scheduled to fight March 19th against Louis Gondino from Tiger Schulman MMA. Louis has already been in the UFC, and he's come back. I think if he wins, if he can beat Lewis, he can actually the winner of that fight can make it in there. We have a great champion at 135. Nick Pace has already been in the UFC. He submitted Ricky Bandejas the last fight. So I think any one of our champions can go, but there's a lot of guys that are coming through the ranks. I think a couple more fights, then they'll fit right in.
All right. I mean, and how many UFC fighters from the CFFC are there right now?
Well, Jonathan Webb actually fought this past Sunday night in Pittsburgh. Then right after him was Anthony Smith, our 185 champion. He was victorious. Then George Sullivan from Kurt Pellegrino is currently in the UFC. Jimmy Rivera was our 135 champion. Aljamain Sterling, who's actually ranked number 5 in the world, undefeated at bantamweight, he was our champion. You really called me.
All right. Well, if
and also I forgot my main man, the Irish Dragon, Paul Felder.
Okay. Well, if you want to go to the UFC, start with the CFFC and contact Arias Garcia. But I mean, that's going to bring our show to a close. We want to thank everyone who came on. We want to thank Connor Hughes. We want to thank Arias Garcia. And remember, bleed green or don't bother bleeding.